Fahrenheit 451 is legitimately the only book I ever enjoyed reading in high school. Well, that is for, being forced to read a book in English class. Of course, I read other books that I enjoyed a lot. I'm not a huge reader, but Fahrenheit 451 is the only book that I was, forced to read that actually kept my attention and was easy to understand. Books like 1984 and, oh God, I can't even think of any. God, I've been out of high school for too long. It's only been a year, but still. Fahrenheit 451, just for the time it was written, I think it was written in the late 50s or so, by Ray Bradbury. It was just written so well, and if any of you guys are still in high school and you are being forced to read Fahrenheit 451, give it a shot. Give it an actual open mind, because it's a really, really good novel, believe it or not. It was just really, really well written for the time, and it wasn't written like a cryptic maze. It was super easy to understand, while also having all these little hidden details that you have to really read in between the lines, no pun intended, to understand. So, why am I talking about Fahrenheit 451? Well, we're actually talking about the movie and how horrible it is. I tweeted out the other night that it was literally the worst film adaptation of a book that I had ever seen, and I stand by that. As imperfect as a lot of films try to portray books, this is hands down the worst. They literally left out like several characters. It is so horrible how they did that. Honestly, the intro right here is already insanely rambly, so I'm just gonna jump into the topics that I want to talk about. So for those of you who haven't read it or haven't seen it yet, Montag is our protagonist, aka main character. And in the book, he's portrayed as this lifeless character, this depressed character. They're living in a dystopian future where they're not able to read books, where they burn books. He's a firefighter. Actually, he's a fireman, because they don't fight fires in this world. They burn books. And it's a really interesting idea. And it is a political book, don't get me wrong, but it's not a political book where they pick sides. It's more of a dystopian, futuristic book where, hey, this could happen, Here I am getting sidetracked again. Point being, and I'm going to show you some clips from the movie because it's just god awful. It's totally awful. In the book, he's portrayed as this lifeless, depressed character, very, very monotone character, because that's how the people in this world are. They don't have any knowledge. They do what they're told, and they don't have much freedom. They do have freedom, but it's not as much freedom as they think they have. However, in the movie, you see clips like this.
Stone, grab that hammer, baby. Let's go. Kyle Joe, round back. Time for some good old-fashioned barbecue. Captain wants some ale soup. Let's do it, boy.
Now, some of you might be thinking that that's not even the same character. Yeah, it is. That character that I just showed you is supposed to be a lifeless, dull character who, and when I say dull, I don't mean interesting. Montag is a very interesting character, but I mean he's, presented in a very dull, boring way, on purpose, and, it just irritates me how they went to modernize the film, and that's how they decided to go about it, by making him a cocky douchebag who sits there, and then they call the people who have books eels. I don't think that was in the book at all. Like, it certainly wasn't in the book to the extent that it is in the movie. That's another thing I want to say, another disclaimer. I know this video is all over the place, but I don't care. I'm ranting. I don't remember everything from the book. I admittedly only read it the one time, and I read it like 2.5 years ago at this point, so, you'll have to forgive me if I get some of the details wrong. But it's just irritating to see them change a character, and I think the idea behind it was to modernize, the film or the story. It just didn't do it. It didn't work. It didn't do anything other than make him, I wouldn't say unlikable, but just made him just unbearable to watch for someone who's actually read the book. It's just horrible. Number two, the second big, huge gripe that I want to talk about is just the fact that it's just, oh man. They removed like 3 main characters that I could just think of off the top of my head, including his wife. Montag had a wife, and she was a really interesting character in the film, or sorry, in the book, not in the film, because she doesn't exist in the film. She's a really interesting character in the book because, it goes to show that their marriage, they don't really have a marriage. It's more so just her she's a stay-at-home, wife, I guess. And what she does is all she does is watch TV. And Ray Bradbury, who wrote the book, he kind of predicted headphones. He called them like seashell shaped something, but they're essentially headphones. It would be like the 1950s version of describing headphones. And she's just in her own world all the time. So Montag and the wife don't really talk at all. And she's constantly taking these happy pills, and she's constantly taking these pills. And there's a couple times, and I should mention also there is going to be spoilers for the book and sort of the movie, because they removed all the good parts of the film, so there's not really many spoilers there. So here's where I'm getting into spoilers. She's overdosing. I think she overdosed multiple times, but I might be wrong about that. It might have only happened one time, but still, it's just this interesting thing that she's kind of having to escape, and she's in her own little bubble, and she has no idea what's going on. She's just this lifeless person, and that goes to show Montag is this person who has tons of inner conflict, right? Whereas this woman, his wife, that's... I think Ray Bradbury made her that type of character, just lifeless, just in her own bubble, constantly taking these pills to show that that's what a person in this world does and is like when there is no inner conflict. Montag has inner conflict because he's secretly curious, and you find out more about that as you read the book. Whereas the wife contrasts that because that's a person who's not curious. That's a person who doesn't care to know the truth, doesn't want to know the truth, is perfectly happy having less freedom and, being controlled by society. And that's a really interesting thing that it's a really interesting dynamic that they had in the book that's just totally removed in the movie, and they removed it for the dumbest reason why, and I'll get to that. It just irritates me. How can you remove such an important character like that? I mean, she wasn't a huge person in the movie, right, or in the book, I'm sorry. But it just still had that, it just had a perfect dynamic, man, that's not in the movie, and that irritates me, That's such an irritating thing. Another thing is Beatty. I fucking hate that name, dude. Horrible name, but, whatever. Montag sounds so cool, and the Clarice is a character I'll get into later, and then Beatty. Beatty just sounds like beady eyes, but I'm getting off topic. The point being, Beatty... His character was weird. I don't remember much from Beatty in the book, to be honest. I'm not going to sit here and say I remember everything about him. But Beatty in the book, his character was kind of the same in the movie, but also not at all. It's hard to explain. But essentially, I don't really like what he did with his character. For example, in one of the parts where he's testing Montag's curiosity about, books and stuff, there's no lead up to it. He's just like, here, open the book. And it's just like, there's so much lead up and hype in the book when you're actually reading it to get to that point. And then in the movie, it's just like 1 second, there's no suspicion, then the next second, here, open this book, read it. And it's like, what were they thinking? And I should mention this is a movie made by HBO, and I had them up here, man, with Game of Thrones and Westworld, and then honestly, this movie dropped down HBO in my mind by like a little bit, but still, it's aggravating, because HBO doesn't screw up, and they did. Oh, this movie's terrible. I'm gonna get into another character, too, that really irks me. Clarice, okay? Clarice. In the book, in the very beginning, after they went to a house and burned up the house and the books, along with the house, Montag's walking home, he smells like kerosene and whatnot, and the 16-year-old girl comes out. Her name is Clarice. She's very innocent. She has this very innocent, childlike way of thinking, right? She's not, it's almost like a childlike wonder, and she has all these ideas, and she has all these questions, right? And one night, I think she lives really close to Montag, so she's outside, playing outside in the moonlight, she's just dancing outside on her own, and Montag walks by. I can't remember how the conversation starts, but long story short, they start talking, and she's asking him all these questions, and Montag is getting uncomfortable because in this society they're not used to being asked questions like this. It's just like, and I think at one point he even says, you ask way too many questions, this isn't right, this is not how this works. And she basically she plants a seed in his mind, right? And it's a seed that, eventually envelops into Montag turning. I mean, the seed is basically what starts the reader's knowledge of Montag's inner turmoil and his inner conflicts, right? You can already see where this is going. The movie did not handle it that way at all. It did a total opposite. I guess, from what I understand in the movie, Clarice is kind of like a mole, so she rats people out for reading books in the movie, kind of, I guess. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if that's what was happening. It was very confusing the way they introduced her character, and her character, oh god, her character's awful. She's not, I'm cringing just getting ready to tell you this next part. She's not 16 in the movie. She's presumably older, I would assume. So essentially what happens is, like, Clarice, I guess, is this weird person who has no... I guess she's someone who's already, like, involved with reading books or something, and I don't remember if that's how she was in the book or anything like that. So basically the way that Clarice is handled is really odd, because in the movie, if you hadn't read the book, the dynamic really wouldn't make sense. I wouldn't think, you know. But and I want to get into that perspective a little bit later. But for right now, basically the way they introduce Clarice and all that is just totally off. And long story short, and this is the part that makes me cringe, because she's 16 in the novel, right? And Montag's like 30. In the movie, they end up dating and start making out, and I'm like, dude, in the book, Montag has a wife, and it's actually meaningful, and Clarice has a family, like uncles and everybody who thinks like her. The family's gone in the movie. Clarice's family is gone. Montag has no wife, and they get together, and it's like, ugh, she's not like that in the book. There's no romantic feelings. There's like romantic, I don't know how to word it. There's like romantic, not situations, like there's parts in the book that allude to romanticism, but it's not like, it's more so they're romanticizing, I think Montag romanticizes her childlike wonder and innocence, not her herself. He's not in love with this girl. It's crazy. This is just, oh, they did such a bad job with the movie. I mean, this isn't like, oh, they tweaked a little plot. They literally removed, like, whole sections so that these two, like a 16-year-old and a 30-year-old, at least in the book, can make out and have, like, probably book babies or some shit. Like, I don't fucking know what's going on with this. But it's just really irritating, you know, the fact that, it's just the fact that they ruined such a good book, and I feel bad. There's another character that they totally left out, too, which... Basically, once Montag starts getting into all these novels and stuff, he goes to this older man's house and he gets all this, you know, information and stuff. It was really cool. It was really intense. That guy's he's not even in the movie at all. It's just, you know, like I said, my memory's not 100% crystal clear in the book, but I remember the dynamics and I remember the thinking of it. The book ended totally different than the movie. The movie didn't even... Basically, the movie was like, hey, the movie was essentially inspired by Fahrenheit 451 with the title Fahrenheit 451. It's just horrible. If they would have... They should have just made an entirely separate movie, because it's not. The movie that you watch is not Fahrenheit 451. For example, I was just thinking about my high school teachers, and I was wondering, I was like... sitting there talking with my girlfriend about it, because I was like, I really wonder if my high school teachers would have, like, shown the movie, because it's not even similar to the book. They showed, so when we were reading Great Gatsby, oh wait, that's another good book. I liked Great Gatsby. That was a good one. But anyways, when they were showing Great Gatsby, we were reading along with it, because they were basically, you know, they go hand in hand. They were pretty similar. You can't even show Fahrenheit 451 along with the book, because it's not the same at all. There's key elements and characters that are not even present in the movie. That's just horrible. Just a horrible adaptation, you know. So that's basically, the rant part is over, but the interesting thing I want to get into is I have two things. Number one, and I brought this up to Alexis, and it's the fact that I almost wonder if the movie was dumbed down this way intentionally as a nod to the book, like, hey, the book says things are getting dumbed down. What if we dumb down the movie about a book being, you know, this way, so that it's like kind of, you know, it's very meta, and it's like that. It's a cool theory. I would like it to be true, but no way in hell. No way in hell that happened. If that happened, you know, I'd be angry, because it's like, we didn't get a good movie out of it, and 99% of the people aren't even going to think of that theory, because... it's such a shallow movie. The movie has nothing to offer. The movie has absolutely... Here's the thing. The book has so many mind-altering thought capabilities that, you know, when one reads Fahrenheit 451, and that's the reason it's a classic, is because when you sit there and read it, and it happened to me several times throughout the book, where I sat there and thought about, how this book relates to our life as we live it as a society, nowadays. I live in the United States, so it's very, very relevant with what's going on. It's not political as in, Democrats, liberal, Republican, conservatives, whatever. It's not like that. It's just something that everybody can enjoy regardless of political, agendas or whatever. So that is a theory to think about. The book itself has a lot of mind-opening ideas, whereas the film just doesn't. It just lacks. And the last thing I want to say before we end things off here is I almost wonder if and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of people down in the comment section who haven't seen it, right? Or haven't read the book but are going to watch the movie. I wonder if the movie itself is going to be good if you haven't read the book. And I can't see it that way because I've read the book and I loved the book, so I can't see it that way. So the thing I'm most interested down below is telling me whether or not you agree or disagree with my ideas and why, or my rant, I suppose. And also, I want to definitely hear from those of you who haven't read the book but watched the movie. I want to know how you guys thought of it, because I'm blinded with hate because of how horrible they made it. It's a shallow movie, It's just they did a bad job, And normally I'm pretty easy on films, but it's horrible. It's terrible. Okay, it felt good to get that out because it just felt good to get it out. It's like 95 degrees in my room when I'm sitting here. I'm starting to sweat, and I'm getting so angry about a movie. But really, I'm not that angry about it. It's just kind of a shame to see a book like that get just such a shallow and pretty terrible movie by HBO. But hopefully, for those of you who watched this and enjoyed it, let me know down below. That's like the fourth thing I want you guys to let me know of. But hey, if you like what I do, maybe subscribe to the channel. There's going to be videos like this probably coming out pretty soon at some point. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see each other very soon.